Greetings all. Lovely to connect with you again on this June gloom morning here in Los Angeles. I actually have been loving our June gloom. I am recording this podcast in preparation for the release for the 4th of July weekend, so you'll be getting this in July, and possibly towards the end of June, but many of you out there have been hearing me over the months with the weather patterns here in Los Angeles, and I think the last time I connected with you, we had a little bit of rain, and now we're having this just delicious June gloom. So every morning starts with this fog that feels like some nice moisture. In my experience, too, that fog is such a beautiful expression of more yin energy as well, which is nice to balance with the strong yang energy that we're having in the summer season. As I record this podcast, we're actually moving into summer solstice. So we're really coming into that fire energy, and in perfect kind of segue for the next big event, which will be the 4th of July weekend, a time to really reflect on that sense of freedom within ourselves and our lives and our world. And I often find myself during the 4th of July weekend, it's a wonderful time to be in festivity and, camping and, get-togethers and fireworks and all that fun outer play. I also find that it's a wonderful time for inner reflection related to my own journey and path, and where am I feeling restricted and shackled, if you will, and where am I needing to create more freedom. And that can be, on a large scale. It can also be on a smaller scale related to those qualities, those inner qualities, my mind talk, my daily activities. Where am I needing to create more freedom? And I find that sometimes these holidays and seasonal changes as well as lunar cycles are such great indicators for us to reflect on our past. And I'm so excited today because and on this podcast, this episode, I have another guest with me today who is such an example of living free and living freedom, Beverly Belle Kent. Beverly and I actually met at yoga, my Kundalini yoga workshop here locally in Venice a few years ago, and then she continued to come to my Women's Wisdom events, and got an opportunity to share some Reiki sessions with her as well, and got to get to know her a little more deeply, and really became part of my community. And Beverly Belle is such an inspiration to me. And probably a year out, or the second year of our, sharing the Women's Wisdom Circle and getting to know each other, she began to share in the Women's Circle about her vision and dream to live more of a nomadic life and to shed some of the weight of, some of the things that we create in our world. And so she's now living that dream, and I'm so excited for this podcast that she was willing to join us and to share a little bit about her journey and how she created and manifested this dream and fulfilling her dharma, really, and which she'll share more about. I want to just share with you a little bit about more of who she is. She's an international yoga and movement teacher for 40 years. Wow. She's an interfaith minister that specializes in blessing babies. She's a national speaker, a reflexologist, and a nomad. And just to give you her contact information so you can have that right off, I'll also share that with you at the end of our podcast. But her blog is tumbleweedadventures.com. That's TUMBLEWEED adventures.com. And her baby blessing site is blessingofthebabies.com. And she can be reached at bkent@blessingsofthebabies.com. So I'm really excited to have her come on board, and I'm going to actually have her join in right now and give us a little bit more about herself before we get into a deeper feel about her journey and how it also it reflects your journey and supports you in living more free. So, Belle, hi.
Hello, Eleanor. Thank you so much for that great introduction. That was very sweet, and especially the nomad piece. I'm not exactly sure. I've heard someone say she's a nomad, and I am truly that now. So thank you, and I thank you, listeners, for also being here. And I do believe that this is going to be a energetic dialogue, a lively, fiery solstice connection, as well as hopefully a learning for all of us. And so with that said, I would like to introduce myself as a yoga teacher and movement teacher first of all. That was my adult vision, and also has carried me through everything that I do. I am a true believer in the yogic ways of being. So that's brought me along to get to where I am right now. And also with being a baby blesser, when I went to seminary, I just knew that my path, besides weddings and other rituals, would be blessing babies. And I do believe that all folks and all things need to be blessed. I believe we all are a blessing, and we just all need to be blessed. And then, of course, it comes back double fold, which is always a treat. And then, and reflexology was I sort of fell into reflexology, which was another interesting adventure, because I just love body work, and I love especially feet and hands work. And I went to class because my friends were going, and I probably do more reflexology than they do. And so that is one of my gifts. And then I'm really a full-time nomad. I live with my partner. He's not the person you would imagine would be a nomad, and he probably would second that. We both work on the road, and he's not he's the technical doer, not the everyday doer. So when people say, oh, well, you have a partner, isn't that nice to do this with? Yes, I do, and he's fabulous, and I couldn't imagine doing this with anyone else. However, I think in a lot of minds' eyes, it's, oh, he's the one that fixes things. He's the one that gets the hooks in, and yes, he does. However, he's really the fabulous technical support and wordsmith man. So with that said, that's my introduction of myself.
That's beautiful, Belle. Thank you. Yeah. I know that I had the pleasure of being a part of your launching out into, I know that it was beginning before you and I met, but you're really launching out into this lifestyle, and I'd love for you to share a little bit with our listeners on how that, process came about for you, maybe briefly, to living your dream, and fulfilling what I experienced from you, your Dharma. So maybe you could share with our listeners, because as we're going into the summer solstice, into the 4th of July coming weekend as well, I'm sure many of our listeners have been, and I was reading up some things this morning actually in yogaanonymous.com about the pressure many of us are feeling with this solstice. We're also in this new moon, and when the listeners get this podcast, it's also going to be a new moon. So many people feel that kind of internal fire of change coming and, needing to take some risks in their lives. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what that was like for you when you felt that for yourself last year, and, what process you may have taken yourself through. I know we're going to take our listeners through a journey, but what you went through and how you made that decision and how you made it so that you can also now be successful, because I know sometimes we can leap in these areas and then we can fall flat, right? So I want to really empower our listeners on how we can leap and fly. Yeah. So what could you share with us about that?
I love both of those analogies of leaping and flying and leaping and falling flat. What I do every year is I have a word for the year, and I live by that word as much as I possibly can. I do have a strong foundation. However, it's what I'm needing to accomplish that year. So January 1, when I wake up, I listen for the word. And I think that that's a key piece, is this listening part. And so back to, and to listening, I heard when I woke up one morning about 15, 20 years ago, that I was moving to New York City. And I just giggled to myself, and I had a yoga center in my little village. I loved my little village. I wasn't going anywhere. I do love to travel, but I wasn't going anywhere. And then that afternoon, my daughter said to me, it might have been a day after, but my daughter said to me, "Is this all there is?" And I said, "Funny you should ask." And I told her about my awake dream. And then we proceeded to move both of our lives forward. And in that place of that year, it might have been my year. I would love to remember which year it was, but it might have been my year that I used leap as my main word. And when I went to write my first check back in the checkbook days, I had this woman on my check that was leaping across this chasm was my checkbook. And, it was not an intentional buying. It was a wake-up call. So that listening, seeing, feeling piece is so very important. So when my daughter and I had this, let's move our stuff, that's really when the beginning of that rang true, rang my bell. And so, and with that said, another awake dream I had was I woke up one morning and I knew I was living in a converted van, a van that's been converted to a living space. And I knew the person who converted it. I said, "This is converted by my friend Chip." The first person I walk into when I walk around the corner, because I lived in the village, walk down Main Street, who's the first person I see? Of course, Chip. So I told him my dream, and he's the one that converted our van last year. And this wonderful wild man comes leaping out of my van and just says, "I'm living your dream. I'm doing your dream. I'm doing your dream. I'm doing your dream." So with that listening and that leaping and creating some kind of foundation each time you hear what it is so that you can take off is exactly the process. So I went to Manhattan, went back to Connecticut, and while I was in Connecticut, my partner, Richard, had moved to California and invited me to come to California, knowing I wanted to be nomadic. And he said, "Well, why don't you start your journey out here?" I landed in California, and I fell in love, as Eleanor will attest. We live in the most beautiful area of the country. And I just went, ooh, I'm back in place. And I said to him, can you give me like a year or two or whatever that was, time frame of, I just need to be back in place. All that Manhattan back and forth was my nomadic piece at that time. And I just needed to reground, regroup, recollect. And then he and I would go on trips. And when the last time we were on a trip last June, we were on our way back, and I said, it's time. He said, it's time. And that's when we packed up and left.
That's beautiful, Belle. What you shared with us, I know so many of us have probably experienced as well, and I know I've definitely experienced that. It was beautiful to hear you talk about it because it reignited my own experiences of what you talked about, which is those internal signs and visions, which you describe come through your dreams. Some people get those through their meditations. I know sometimes I've actually received those signs and dreams in a Reiki session. So sometimes they can happen through our yoga practice, Reiki session, any other kind of healing session. And then what you described, which was so beautiful, is then there's the external confirmation, right? We have like the internal nudge, the internal voice, the internal vision or image, and then the external confirmation. And that's what you described was so beautiful because that's truly the co-creation of you with the universe, right? And then you're following. So what I really heard you saying is one of the ways to follow those leaps and fly, right? Because sometimes it is necessary to follow those leaps and fall flat as part of learning, but to also learn how to fly is to listen and watch the internal and then watch for the external signs and then keep following those signs, which is what I hear you talking about. And what also was beautiful was how you described how you had that vision of the van being created for you, to be, I forget the terminology. What was that term, Belle, where he built the van for you, the internal structure of the van?
It's conversion.
Yeah, the conversion. And you knew who it was, and then it was, what was it, a year later or 2 years later that it's now a reality.
Right. No, from the vision. No, from that vision. Oh, that was many years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful experience too for us, that we can have these visions, and it doesn't, sometimes we get these visions or with these inclinations and we think like it should manifest tomorrow. Right? And as a minister with blessing babies, you have such beautiful, and I haven't mentioned that to our listeners, part of this call is also, elder wisdom. You have this elder wisdom of being with this birthing process, and knowing the process that goes into that. Also being a mother yourself, that there's that 9-month gestation, and that's true too for our visions and our dreams. Sometimes it's 9 months, sometimes it's several years. So being patient with that vision and then it's manifesting is what I hear you say is part of the success of being able to really fly in your dreams, with your dreams.
Totally.
Yeah. That's beautiful. What an inspiration. And, I'd love to kind of take a moment before we go into doing a guided visualization for our listeners to support them in leaping out themselves in the areas in their lives, to hear a little bit about, I heard that possibly, you're landing here in Los Angeles and kind of grounding here was a little bit of that first step of, falling. Didn't feel here like you were falling flat, but you just, taking a pause in that vision. But maybe you can share a little bit about the challenges that have come up for you in following this vision and in fulfilling this part of your Dharma. What are some of those times that you felt like you've fallen flat, and what have you done? You shared with us too how your yoga practice, is such an integral part of your path, which is something I share with my listeners all the time about our daily practice, right? That's a huge thing that I share with my listeners is the importance of our daily practice, both our yoga and Reiki practice. And so I'd love to know from you in those places of challenge how your yoga practice or whatever practice you do has supported you through that and what you've done. What are the tools that you maybe can share with our listeners that have helped you through those challenges?
Sure. I have a brand new practice this year, which has been so fun. I have my physical practice. I have my meditative practice, and I write the 3 pages every morning, morning pages, sometimes into 4. And what I started doing because of space and time is I go into a posture and I write now. And it's been a trip. It's been enjoyable. It's been crazy because I'm like, no, I'm not focused on, I could go with that, I'm not focused on just writing. I'm not focused on just yoga. I'm not focused on and then I just threw my hands up and I said, no, these are the 3 things I love to do. I put my pen down. I meditate on if I've written something that I need to stop and listen to and pray for, and then I'll rewrite. So it's been quite an interesting piece of where is that essential practice. So this year was my new practice. This year, nomadism is a practice, multidimensionality is a practice, and being quite connected more with the earth. We live every single day on the earth, which is such a treat. We get up, our breakfast is made outside, our lunch is made outside, our dinner is made outside, and we're just physically connected to the earth. Our friends invite us to come into their homes when we sleep in their driveways, and we say, oh, no. We'd much rather be outside. And when the falling flat piece, so let me just take a moment and think about the falling flat piece. I think falling flat piece is living in a tiny space with another person. And choosing to respect my wishes and his wishes, and once I find myself longing for something different, to really check in is what is it that what is it I really, really, really want. And to talk about it, I do have a man that talks, so that's also a wonderful piece. The challenges of also the organizational piece has just been crazy for me. I've always chosen to live as simply as possible. However, these things have always glommed onto me. I have feels like a forever vision of myself like the pig pen. Is that the cartoon character in Peanuts comics? And that this stuff follows me. And for someone who doesn't like things, and people continue to give me things, and I appreciate them and I receive them, and I turn around and give them away. So I do think that the challenges are being receptive and respectful of the space around me, the people around, how I want to be. I love that feeling of being in union and with everyone. So that's the practice. It's in union with things and with the trees. And we were having coffee the other day, and a tree was being felled, and my heart just, I felt like it was just crushing because I was so connected to the earth. And I just immediately sent the tree blessings and hope for the tree spirit to find another spirit to jump into. And so there's a fragile piece, there's a fragility that happens when you're living on the earth with all things, with the animals as well as the people.
That's beautiful, Belle. I'm sure you're like definitely having that incredible relationship with the elements in a completely new way. And what I heard you talk about too is, as part of moving through the challenges, is really the fluidity, both in your partnership and with the world around you, and even with yourself, with those areas of letting go of things, not getting over rattled with things that may end up around you, and being more in the flow, and even with fluidity within your practice as it's taking a new form this year in your nomadic life. And isn't that such a beautiful way to also describe what freedom is really being able to be fluid. And I think in these times, with so much changing with so many of us, it so requires that fluidity. And it's interesting, in the summer season, it's such a fiery season. It's very much a yang season, right? Such the element of fire. And yet we find ourselves really gravitating to the water. Most people go to the oceans during the summers. So it's that, again, that water element and fluid element seems to be such an important part of this summer season, and such an important element of freedom, fluidity. And so I'd love to now move into taking our listeners through the journey that you're going to guide us through, Belle. And so I will begin by grounding us and preparing us for that, to support our listeners in deepening in their sense of freedom. So I want to invite all of you, and again, if you are driving while listening to this podcast, I ask that you, if you want to keep the podcast going, that's fine, but to just wait until you are in a more receptive mode to really actually follow this visualization that we're going to be guiding you through. And you can always pause this podcast and start up again when you're in a place where you're able to be more receptive. So I invite those that can to find a comfortable position and either be sitting or laying down. And just begin to bring awareness to your breath. Notice the inhale and notice the exhale. And notice the depth or shallowness of your breath in your body. Notice any tension in your body, any holding. And begin to bring in that fluidity. Begin to free the breath. Begin to free the body by deepening the breath. See if you can allow the inhale to match the length of the exhale and vice versa. And just to support in deepening the breath, let's take a few cleansing breaths. I want you to deeply inhale in through your nose. And I want you to let out through and off down through your mouth as you exhale. And again, inhale and exhale. And one more, inhaling fully into the present moment and then exhaling completely. Beautiful. And just continuing in the deepening of your inhale and exhale and into your nose now. Moving out of the mind space into the breath, into the body. And just feeling the fullness of the breath as it fills the body all the way down to your toes and up the back. Fluid flow. Creating spaciousness in the breath. That creates spaciousness in the mind. That then creates spaciousness in your body. Allowing any tension to melt in the fluidity of your breath in the lower, mid, upper back, between the shoulder blades, neck, head, to the scalp muscles, face muscles, and jaw. Just letting go. Grounding and centering yourself in the fluid flow of your breath. And creating freedom simply through your breath. Freedom of worry, freedom of thought, coming into present. And for my Reiki practitioners out there, you can begin to invite Reiki to flow. So as you inhale and you exhale, inhaling and breathing into the flow of Reiki, exhaling, allowing you to circulate through your body temple. Deepening in your breath, connecting in with your sit bones or the soles of your feet, and breathing into the connection of the ground beneath you and the earth beneath you, as Belle so beautifully described her lifestyle now of living so one with the earth. Allow that here in this space, grounding yourself and allowing that sense of separation between you and the earth to dissolve as you imagine roots extending through your sit bones, through your legs, into the earth. So as you breathe in, you're breathing into the soil beds, crystal beds, and river beds of the earth. Exhaling anything that needs to be released and breathing in that union with the earth, feeling her primal life force rivets and runs through your body temple. Her soil beds are like your tissue and muscles, and rivers are like your lymph and your blood. Boulders are like your bones. And so you're strong and yet supple. You're free and wild and yet grounded and centered. And with that, I'd like to segue to Belle as she continues guiding you through this journey.
And now what I'd like you to do is create an intention for yourself. What is it that you're truly needing right now? Make it simple, make it clear. What is it that you truly want right now? As I take you on this journey, I'd like you to breathe your intention into your body, into your mind, into your heart, into your spirit and soul. And exhale it out so that you can completely let it go. Knowing you can always return to your intention at any time. And what I'd like you to imagine is yourself 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. You're talking to someone who's asked, how did you get here? And take that little journey through time to get to where you really, really, really want to be. And what's your impact? What's the invitation? What's the initiation you might have had to go through? How might you respect yourself and others a little bit more? Clearly see who you've become. And how did you get there? And what was that impact? What was the foundation? What was the fluidity? What was the fire? What was the heart? What was the sound? What was the mind? What was the spirit wanting for you? Who did you bring along with you? Where are you? So let your imagination run wild. Take another deep breath in. And feel that. See it, smell it, use your senses. Might even be able to taste it. Hear it. Be exactly how you've imagined yourself to be all along. And now choose to close your imagination for a moment and come into a place that loves you no matter what. And ask for that one thing, or notice that one thing that stood out on your little journey. And name that one thing. And now, in the next 24 hours, what could you do to re-spark that? How could you bring that into your life? What one little tiny thing can you do? No need to go to the big grand vision, but what tiny little thing can you do the next 12, 24 hours to help you integrate what you've just received? And take another breath in. Feel your whole body. Let it go. Invite yourself to feel that intention, that impact, and the integration as Eleanor invites us to our next step.
Thank you so much, Belle. Wow, that was powerful and beautiful. So, gently bringing your awareness back to your breath. Bringing awareness to your toes, wiggling your fingers and your toes. Bringing connection with the ground wherever you are, either through your sit bones or your feet. And as Belle so beautifully guided us, just bringing that sensation, that feeling tone, that vision with you now, back as you come back into your space, coming back fully into your body, into your room or wherever you're residing. And taking a moment and hydrating yourself as part of grounding yourself. And you can pause this podcast. We are going to begin closing. You can pause this podcast before listening to the rest of our podcast to just journal your experience, to journal your vision, to journal the feeling tone, that sensation, all those aspects that Belle guided us through. And I suggest that you, during this 4th of July week, that you reconnect with what it is that you are writing, to what it is that you've garnished from this exercise. Reconnect with it on a daily basis, both through your writing and, if you like, in your meditations, just taking yourself back to that exercise that Belle guided us through. And as Belle so beautifully guided us, really living it now, living that vision now. And that is truly freedom, isn't it? So that I know I find myself often with the visions that I have, sometimes some things, in such deep gratitude that I'm living now what I had visioned years ago, and then sometimes not where I'm not experiencing what I'm visioning for the future now. And so what I've known for myself, and definitely this experience that Belle just guided us through, is that whatever it is that we want to experience or have, or, living the dream, living it now affords us such sense of freedom now, and that faith in knowing that it will manifest in form in those, allowing that gestation period and that birthing period. And I want to, as we close, I want to read to you. I opened up to one of my goddess books. Belle is familiar with the Book of Goddesses by Nancy Blair, and I think this relates to both men and women, so both our men and women listeners. Goddess, when we use that term goddess, it is not limited to women. It is definitely an aspect of both men and women. And, in this Aquarian age, we're living in a time where we're aware of both the feminine and masculine as a true energy for both men and women, and that can be related to as the goddess and God as well. And so the one I opened up to is Fortuna. And I thought that was so appropriate for our talk today on freedom. It says here, in Roman times, Fortuna was the force behind all propitious events. She used her special magic to create abundance wherever she smiled. Her powers of fertility and increase were called upon in all human affairs. If you're looking outside yourself for prizes and rewards to confirm your personal sense of security, it's time to review your values. Prosperity resides in your consciousness. The wisdom of the goddess Lifeway teaches us to look within. Driven by scarcity and greed, never having, doing, or being enough, we are driving ourselves to the brink of personal and planetary destruction. Simplify your life. Eliminate excesses, which I feel Belle so beautifully exemplifies through her path. Do you have feelings of scarcity and deprivation that trigger the need for more, more, more? Fortuna teaches us to transform a fear-based poverty mentality into a plenty enough state of being. Life is not a pie with only so much to go around. As we are guided by Fortuna, we are required to make friends with money as well. This is a good time to sort the apples from the oranges, balance your checking account, open a savings account for some future winter folly or weekend getaway. Make conscious decisions about what and who your money supports. Take a course in money management to better perform your money magic rituals. Fortuna reminds you that it only takes a short glance and a little financial savvy to see that the word nowhere is now here. And the affirmation is, I am enough, I do enough, I have enough. I am blessed with many gifts, and I am grateful. I easily take care of my finances. I am healthy, wealthy, and wise in all ways. I attract supportive, loving relationships and joyful situations. So, as we close, I want to leave you with that. It felt so apropos for our conversation today. That part of living free and part of that sense of wildness, one of my early Kundalini Yoga teachers said that to me, and it really stuck to me, that a free soul is one that has discipline. So our discipline with our finances, our discipline with our practice, our discipline with our path. And within that discipline, of course, is fluidity, but that is truly the foundation to our freedom. And I want to thank Belle so much for being with us, and give her an opportunity to close here with us as well. It was such a delight to share this time with you, and to bask in your elder wisdom that you've garnished over the years and to share with our listeners. I'm so inspired by you, and so delighted to know you and to call you my friend. So
thank you. I really appreciate this time, Eleanor. It just felt like the listeners were here, and we were in circle. Really was quite fabulous. And as I close, one of the things that I have come up with my business partner is that I have found freedom. Freedom for me is choosing life instead of living with things. And I think that is so, put exclamation marks on that. It's freedom is choosing life. So what is the life instead of the thing?
Wow.
So, with that, I thank you, and blessings on our paths, and blessings out into all beings with no interest.
Thank you, Belle. Yes, that's so beautiful. Thank you for leaving us with that. And again, to contact Belle directly, you can go to her website, blessingofthebabies.com. You can also contact her at B as in Belle, Kent, Kent, at blessingofthebabies.com. And of course, you can connect with me also at sacredventures.com, reikiunleashed.com. I have a Reiki class coming up in July, and also a Reiki and yoga workshop here locally, as well as a webinar that will be coming up this month as well that is free. It's free for this month again. We did it in June, and then we'll be starting to offer it at a small rate. So do join us for these free events. At this, it felt like that was pretty apropos for the 4th of July weekend too, freedom. And then also I look forward to seeing some of you for our Maui retreat. So do go to sacredventures.com to the retreat section and register for that. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know that you're listening to us. I always love, when I get Facebook posts or comments or emails of listeners letting me know that you've been listening and how you've benefited from these podcasts. I'm also always available for one-on-one sessions in person or over the phone for wherever you are in the world. And so with that, I leave you with just wishes of deep peace in this summer, and a sense of freedom within your mind and body in the present moment. And as Belle so beautifully exemplified, living that vision, living that freedom right now, right here. And much love, Reiki Aloha, love to you, Satnam, Namaste.